We are live. Welcome to the Social Work Race, guys. You know what this channel is about. I guarantee that by the end of this session, you will have learned more about social work, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Today, and what to do with the good, the bad, and the ugly. I guess so. I guess we're here with someone who I met through LinkedIn. I'm just making sure I got
Yes.
that right. Yes, it was Rebecca. I'll let her introduce herself in a moment. This is the platform for you if you want to learn, grow, and share. This is the platform for social workers to voice what maybe they're not hearing enough about. This is the platform for you. Rebecca, thank you for joining us. And just before I let Rebecca introduce herself, actually, she asked me a question. I asked her a question, how was your day? She told me how her day was. And then she asked me how my day was. And I said, and I think this is just something that, social workers or any professional can mull over. And it was, I only got a part way through it. And I said, let me say it online. And it was simply, it's interesting to see how cases unfold, because I work in an assessment team. And so something came through and I had a level of intuition about a family. And I was in back of my mind, I said, there's something not right about this. And I spoke to my manager about it today and I said to her, look, I thought that there was something wrong with these parents, but I couldn't voice it in the assessment. It was something that I was seeing, but it was just distant. And I think that I've got like really good intuition when it comes to people. And it turns out that as it's unfolding after the assessment, we're starting to see things that are not quite right, quite concerning, actually. When sometimes you say a parent or two might be really good at hiding something like professional disguise level of compliance. And I was seeing that today. And so it's always enlightening to say that, I'm still able to do certain things well. But the reality is that sometimes there are things that you'll see that you just can't do anything about because how do you vocalize or articulate what you see that is so elusive, So that was how my day was, Rebecca. It was a lot of that today, just a lot of
Oh, wow.
exploration around things. But Rebecca, let me just give you the mic and say, just please introduce yourself. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. I'm Rebecca Olayinka. I'm a social worker, qualified social worker, last 10, coming up to 11 years. Gosh, I can't believe it's gone so quickly. So yeah, and I'm also care experienced and a writer and a poet. So a
Hold
few
on,
things.
go back. Care experience. What do you mean?
Care experience. So I was fostered when I was little. So when I was a child. So I've experienced being fostered.
Okay. We might go into that, Let me just make a note of what I do. Okay. Fostered. And okay, and you said you're a writer and poet, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you mind saying what that book is, or those,
Yeah, there's 3 now. Gosh. Been very blessed to be in 3 books now. So I've been contributing author to 3 books. So one was Outlanders, The Hidden Narratives of Social Workers in Colour, or Social Workers of Colour.
Sorry, can you hear that? Sorry. That's my
Can
door
hear
ringing.
something.
I'm not getting it.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Give us the name of the book again. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. It was Outlanders, and it's Hidden Narratives from social workers of colour. And that was a project that Wayne Reed from Baswa and Siobhan McLean did back in 2020, but it came out in 2021, so last year.
Interesting.
And I was also in Insiders, Outsiders. That's another book from Siobhan McLean and Mary Carter. They both edited it. It's called Hidden Narratives of Care Experienced Social Workers. So I don't know if that's visible there. So yeah, and that's all about, so Outlanders, I didn't explain properly. So Outlanders is all about, that's my tale of being a Black social worker. And the Insiders, Outsiders, all about a bit about my care experience. So coming as a social worker who has experience being fostered.
Yeah.
And the other book, which I haven't got to hand at the moment, is it's a Chicken Soup for the Soul book that was published in the US. And that's all about 101 stories from Black women of love, courage, and hope. And one of my poems went in there. And that came out last year.
So you've been busy.
Yeah.
You got your hands in a few pies and also a poet, right?
Yeah, poet. And I was writing up until earlier this year. I was writing for an online magazine called The Everyday, which I published a lot of my articles and poetry through. So they've stopped now, so they're no longer continuing, unfortunately. But yeah, I did a lot of mine. That really helps grow my confidence. But I've always been writing since I was about 13.
Yeah, I'm hearing it, and it's interesting because, you know, although we have conversations, or you know, not everybody do I have major conversations. I've had interesting conversations with you off camera.
Yeah.
Just because obviously when people I don't know certain folk, I would like to just get to know them a bit better. And I did not know that you were a writer. So it's an interesting thing because we're going to segue through your books into the topic. It's all a big coincidence, or maybe it was written in the stars. I don't know. But as a social worker, identity and race means something to you, and I know that it's that season of looking at diversity. And one thing I'm mindful of is that I don't want to overplay the and you probably can hear my daughter in the background. I don't know.
I can't hear her actually.
Yeah, okay, cool. You will.
But she's little, it's fine.
This is it. I can't. So when you're, I don't want to overplay the topic of discrimination, racism, prejudice, but I think, like your title suggests, it's always interesting for all people to explore hidden narratives of professionals.
Yeah.
See, I have a little script here, and I'm like, let's jig it up a little bit because
let's do it.
You've thrown something in there. Okay, so what we wanted to look at today, guys, originally was, I haven't got a title for it, but it might just be this: the racism within, because it was a term you used when I had a conversation with you. As a social worker, where I work in a county, and it's obviously when you work in counties, they're predominantly of the white demographic.
Yeah.
The inner cities have more minorities. That's just the way it is. I've had a couple of experiences where I've worked, but I don't think the people I've worked with are racist. Let's have a little nuanced discussion now.
Yeah.
But I've heard things that are sometimes, oh gosh, how can I put it? Really frustrating to hear. Make me think, what does that mean? Should I get upset? Yeah. Should I let it go? As for you, who's written that book, you've been involved. I tried to get, through you, I'm going to try and get Wayne Reed on, because I was trying to recruit this guy.
I'm sure he'd be very happy.
I hope so. But what do you mean by the racism within, as a professional, maybe personal? Yeah, what do you mean by that?
I think maybe two things. Actually, now when you put that to me, I probably thinking of two things. So I suppose the racism within social work and health and social care professions in general, although I can only speak about my experiences of social work. And I think within people in a way, although saying that, I'm just mindful of how I'm saying that, because I'm not obviously accusing everyone of being racism, having racism within them, but sometimes people are not aware of, sometimes they've got tendencies towards actually being racist, and those things only come out through sometimes discussions, sometimes actions, sometimes behaviors. And I think it's really good to have those discussions and open discussions, and people being aware that it might be actually helpful to not go up and say, oh, I'm a racist, because it might not land well, obviously, with people, and that's quite emotive. But and people don't want to be considered racist. Most people don't. But actually, maybe I have some unconscious biases. Maybe I just, aware of my own privileges. I've never, experienced, I don't know, being around Black people enough. I don't know them. I don't know all other ethnic minorities. I don't know how they live. And I've got a certain stereotype of how I feel that they are. And I need to challenge my own stereotypes and my own prejudices, because what I get from the media is different when I meet somebody. Does that make sense?
Of course. Yeah, you don't have to ask if it makes sense. You are making sense, all day, because you know how to articulate, and it's so important that we can. Because I mean, I'm happy to have guests who, quote unquote, have a chip on his shoulder, professional or not, maybe just a layman. Because I think everybody has a perspective that probably it feels valid to them.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. How much of this experience of racism have you had? Obviously, when I won't say obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, you are a Black woman and you've grown up in care. Maybe there's elements of growing up in care that kind of help you see some of that discrimination in your experience. I mean, tell me a little bit about your history and what you've gone through right up into your profession as well, your professional experience.
Oh God, how long have you got? But no, I mean, it's oh gosh, so when I was in care, my and it's really weird, because not for a long time, and I've had these discussions with my sister, that we didn't see ourselves as care experience, because my care experience probably wasn't quite, there's no typical care experience, really. I've started to realize that. And I always thought my experience wasn't a typical care experience at all, and I couldn't call myself care experience because mine didn't fit into the neat boxes of care experience. So I didn't move around. I was lucky enough not to be in multiple placements. I was fostered from a very specific period of time. So when I was a baby until I was about 10, and I had one primary caregiver. So it was my foster mum.
From what age?
From the age of 0, say baby.
Wow.
The age of baby until I was 10. And then I went back to live with my mum. So nobody really seemed to, I had social workers involved towards the end of when I was leaving my foster mum, but no one really, I didn't feel ever listened to. So they would ask me, who do you want to live with? And I would say my foster mum, because she was all I knew, right? She was my safety net. She was the person who looked after me day in, day out. And she was white as well. But she never really treated me like I was different. In fact, when I used to have, so I used to have a lot of issues at school. So I was fostered outside London. So it was a place called Captain-on-Sea. Jaywick Sands, to be actually specific, but it's very close to Captain-on-Sea. And we were near the beach. So
I've heard of Jaywick. Oh, wow.
That was great. And I got stung by a jellyfish a lot. But I was the only black child in my school. In fact, there was a mixed race boy in my school, but he, in my primary school, I should say, but he pretended that, you know, he wasn't, and you know, he would join in when there was kids taunting me. It was a really strange experience because on one hand I had friends, I had really nice friends, and I played a lot. But then there was other experiences where, you know, if I did something that they didn't like, they would make it very clear, abundantly clear to me that I did not fit in, particularly older children were
Now,
very
hold on.
quick.
Are you talking about you didn't fit in because of the color of your skin, or just you didn't
Yeah,
fit in?
the colour of my skin. So I would have been fine if I had, my skin was white. But yeah, my foster mum used to be very like, sometimes when I'd be out, so say this was after school or this was, you know, weekend or holiday, and the kids in my neighborhood, we'd all play together, and some of them usually were older than me, and if I won a game or did something they didn't like, they would start calling me names. So it'll be okay to play with me for a bit, as long as I towed the line, and I didn't realize that. But when I did something they didn't like, then the name calling would come out.
Wow.
And I remember being really upset, actually running into my foster mum. Her name was Mummy Marceline. And I used to say, you know, to her, the kids have said this, they've said that, and I was just crying in tears. And she would say to me, you go outside and you call them this and you call them that. And she was not having any of it. So she really like helped me to stick up for myself. Actually, I'm not saying that that's the best way now, but at the time you work with what you've got, right? And you know, I think she realized from a early age that she's not always going to be able to be there for me, in the sense that she had her own health battles at the time that I did not know of. And she just wanted to make sure that it wasn't just, you know, me being, she never used the word victim, but you know, in these terms now, I would say, you know, being a victim, and you know, victim of what other people are saying about me, and I should let that define me. So she would always be like quite a strong ally, I would say, for me. I never really, but at the same time there was nuances with that, because there was issues. So she never liked the word black. She thought it wasn't a nice word, so she would call me brown. And so that had issues when I went to live with my mum, and I'd never seen so many black children in or different races actually in a school or in a playground before. I'd been to London, I'd seen my mum, you know, I still had contact with my mum, that's the word, but I didn't really have all different types of people all together. I'd see a lot of black children, but that would be really within a close community setting, so a church setting. So when I was at school and I'd left, and I'd said to people, you know, I was brown, and it came up really randomly. We were playing a game, and we had to say what color we were, and we had to say what star sign we were. It was so random, I still remember it. And I said, you know, I was a Scorpio and I was brown, and oh my gosh, the amount of disgust that I got from kids. I mean, they probably didn't think it was a disgust that they were saying, but it just felt like I was, you know, they just couldn't understand why I was saying it. Don't you know you're black? Are you stupid? All sorts of things. And these were other black children saying that to me. So it was quite interesting that, and from then on, I just did not belong there at all. I felt quite outside, even though I was around people who looked like me. I really never felt welcomed or actually felt like I was one of them.
Yeah.
So and then I had that also at my foster home. So there was like this weird situation where in one part I completely didn't look like the people I was around, and I didn't fit in. And then I looked like the people I was around in another setting, and I still didn't fit in. So it was really difficult because there was no one to help me make sense of that. And there was just this whole, you need to get on with it and just deal with it. And ironically, social services didn't want to know. So
You didn't want to know what?
didn't really want to know. After I'd gone back to live with my mum, they weren't really
Ah,
interested at all.
yeah.
They were, just happy that it was one less person, one less child to deal with. I'm assuming at the time. This is what I'm thinking. I'm not saying social was a
I
social.
think you're probably right, but yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's been my experience in relation to when I was younger. So when I got older, I've had various different experiences. So experiences of, how should I say? I would say now, it falls into different spheres. Like you've got misogyny. What is it? No, it's not misogyny. It's misogynoir. That's it. Which
That's a new word for me. Come on.
that's what you face if you're black and female.
Oh no, God, say that word again.
Misogynoir. It's misogyn noir, like the French noir.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
it's taken from the book Stay in Your Lane.
Mm-hmm.
And well, it's not taken from the book, but they quote that in the book. So that's where I got it from. And it's basically being black and female and just identifying there's different other levels of oppression that you would face. Because apparently in the world there is a ranking, and a kind of like a colorism ranking as well. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
something I can get onto later, but
Mm.
in relation to ranking of, okay, you've got white man, white woman, or I think it's white man, black man, white woman, and then you've got black female at the right at the bottom.
You can't go down that road now, You have to come back on the show and talk about that. Because, because it just depends how conscious you are about what we
Yeah.
are. Okay. And some of it's perspective and some of it's perspective, some of it's subjective, some of it's objective, but it is because we can understand, we say it out of our mouths. It's something, right? And
Yeah.
I've never heard about colorism being spoken of between any professional, especially in social care. We don't necessarily, and it's something that could feature at times in our assessments because it was a big thing. I'm glad to say, like, my mum has this color, well, had this color skin, yeah, and my dad is darker than that. My dad's side are quite dark. My mum's side are pretty much mostly this color. My granddad, my grandma, she had green eyes, and she would talk about it with me growing up. Yeah, that's right. She would talk about it with me growing up about the slightly different treatment that she would get compared to her siblings because she was lighter skinned,
Yeah.
or those that were lighter. And this is in Jamaica in the 30s, 40s, growing up. And colorism is quite an issue in West Indies, Africa. Over here, depends on who you live with and where you live. But then I would like to take this point then. You open up so much
Yeah.
into your adult stroke professional life because you are a professional and you are aware that it's not necessarily that people are calling you the N-word or hating you for your color of your skin, but the sub level aspects of it all. And we just mentioned colorism, which isn't anyway. What do you want to address with that in your adult stroke professional experience of the kind of sub racism? Is that what we should call it? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that will come out definitely. So racism will be another layer, another term that will come out. I think the fact, there is a term called intersectionality, which was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, and that can apply even if you are not black, but you might be disabled and female, for example, or disabled and gay and male. There's different ways of applying. So it's not just, I wouldn't say it was just for Black people, but in relation to my experiences of those things, yeah, I've had a lot, and it's been very painful. I mean, I think one of the most painful is when I've had friends, or should I even say,
Careful now.
I had ex partners who would
Once
who
it
have,
goes out
you
there,
know,
it's out there, right?
yeah,
All right.
who've gone out with me, and I think I didn't realize, not all obviously, but some where there was things that happened, and it might be things that their friends have said or done, and I'm the one challenging, and they're not there challenging at all, and they don't see anything wrong, and in fact they're actually making excuses for behaviors. And there was a point, in one of those relationships where I felt like I had to choose between the relation. There was other issues, but choose between the relationship and my own identity as a Black woman. And it was really hard because there was a lot of investment. There's a lot of things that gone on, and yeah, I never had to think about that before, but I was like, I need to choose me. And, you know, I would never want to be someone else, no matter how painful it's been. I've always, you know, never thought of being any other colour, basically. I've never really thought of actually, maybe when I was really little and all the people around me were white, I might have thought, you know, maybe that would have been just be easier, obviously. But still, I just couldn't, you know, I feel like that's something, you know, about me that makes me me. And I don't feel like anyone really should ever have to choose, you know, or make any kind of decision about, okay, it's my color, or it's this relationship, or it's something else. Do you know what I mean? Unfortunately, I'm sure there's people who've been put in that position, that unfair position, many times. But I don't feel that should happen at all. We're all humans, we're all people, and we all are deserving of love and belonging. And I think that's the problem as well, that people don't see. There's a lot of dehumanization where people don't see people as people. I mean, we had that in the slave trade, right? Where people were treated, you know, Black people were treated as cargo, as dogs, and do you know what I mean? Not as human beings.
Oh, lower.
And even lower than that. But, you know, and I think those things are still ingrained in a really weird way. I think we've moved ahead in the sense that, although there is the issue.
Ingrained where?
Sorry?
Ingrained where?
Ingrained in people's psyches. There was a politician I was watching on BBC News a few weeks ago, and she said that we just paid off. She was a Black politician. I can't remember her name, but she said we had just paid off the loan that we had to pay slave traders out.
Compensate.
Yeah,
them
compensate. And
for
that's only happened really recently. And I was like, what? I was like, what?
And we know some African nations are still paying and have a lifetime of a share. A European country will have a lifetime share in their produce or gain as a result of becoming independent.
Yeah.
So when you say it's got to be ingrained,
Yeah.
you're saying we must then have active components of this. Now, then let me move that on, because I think that, and I'm not just speaking to white folk, and I don't like using the term Black myself, but I have to.
Yeah.
And I don't like using the term white either, but I do, because it's sadly just the only way to put it over. But white folk will be there saying, I have Black friends. We're all on the same team. Yeah. We're all professionals. I won't tolerate racism. But I just said that there must be components or elements that are subconscious,
Yeah.
So as a professional, you've been a social worker for 10 years and you've probably got a lot more life and work experience around that. What are you seeing or what have you experienced that would make me, if I was a white person or of the race or light skinned,
Mm.
what would I need to consider from your experience? And this is about you and yours.
Yeah, I think definitely being black and being female has a really it lands differently. I'm not saying that if you're a black male that you won't experience racism at all, but there is that whole social construct of
Mm-hmm.
men, women, pay differences as well.
Mm,
It's already there, isn't it?
mm,
And I feel that it can be easy to say you may know, you read a book, but you can never understand somebody's real lived experiences. And I
mm,
feel that the most that you can do is really educate yourself, not expect someone to do that for you, but also hold compassion and empathy. I feel that sometimes the profession does sometimes, and I'm not just talking about race here, I'm going to be more general, just really quickly, in the sense that I feel sometimes the profession is very good at being, okay, we're compassionate, we're empathetic, we speak to clients, we speak to families, we speak to services, we speak to loads of different people, and we can say we're compassionate to their experiences, we're empathetic to their experiences. But actually, I don't always think that the profession does a really good job at looking after our own. And I've experienced that through various management and lots of different places where I've worked, where I was quite shocked when I first came into the profession, because I just wanted to help people. I had a real desire to help people. And I just thought, if I can make someone else's experiences different from my own and really
mhm.
help them to get to somewhere, a desired place quicker, then that's what I'd love to do. But I
Mm.
think it's more around actually sometimes forgetting that, people do need looking after, and, social workers are human as
Yep.
well.
Yep.
And if you add race into that, the fact that you're never going to completely understand, because sometimes people want to understand. I've had some people say to me, I just want to understand. I just want to understand. I'm like, this doesn't make logical sense. You're not going to really understand, because you cannot you can try and put yourself in my shoes, which is what empathy is. But, you're not going to understand what it is to be a black and female. That's, when you're a completely different race, it's going to be too, you're trying to do it from a logical perspective, and it's not logical. Racism isn't logical, it's illogical. It's
Mm.
not something that you can reason with at all. It doesn't make sense.
So, I mean, that sounds like, and I'm putting on, sorry, I hate to say this, guys, but I'm going to use very blatant terms. I'm putting on white ears now. You just basically said, I won't get it.
Yeah, I just don't think you will. And I think there needs to be an acceptance of that, first of all, that you
So,
won't
so,
get it.
so what's the point in discussion if there's nothing to get?
Well, the point of discussion is to inform and to be aware of your own biases, your own prejudices, your own assumptions as well, and look at
Mm,
how you can make a difference. Because even though I'm saying you're not going to get it, as in you've not had that experience, I mean, I'm not going to get what it's like to, for example, be trans. That's not an experience I've ever gone through. I've never gone
mm,
through being a
fair enough.
transsexual. I don't see that happening in my lifetime. So I'm never going to get what a transsexual or transgender person is going to experience,
Mm,
or somebody who's got some sort of other neurodiversity, or something else that
mm,
society will say makes you different. I'm not going to understand that. However, I know it's wrong that somebody's being beaten up because they're homosexual, because they're transgender, because they're trans, whatever. I know that's wrong. They're another human being. We're not put on the earth to hurt each other. Unfortunately, that's what we do, but that's not, I feel, our main purpose. our
That,
purpose is for, you know, fuller and greater expression.
that
So
that is so interesting. So really, are you saying it's not about getting it or feeling that you, as someone who's different, can even possibly put yourself in my shoes? It's probably more about being mindful of the differences and working with or doing something about
yeah,
your higher level of consciousness now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really about and accepting that, because it's different when it's hard when you say, or you know, somebody's you try and say, oh, you know, we're all the same. And I do believe in our core, we're all the same. We all have the same spirit, you know. And I do believe what you're saying as well in relation to color. I don't like using, you know, different words, colors to describe people, because to me that's not the essence of who they are.
Mm,
However, I think there needs to be an acknowledgement that someone will have a different experience from you, and may have gone through some things, like somebody who went through, you know, I've known people unfortunately who've experienced cancer, and I'm never gonna be able to say to them, you know, I understand what you're going through, but at the
yeah,
same time I
yeah.
can look and be like, well, what do you need from me? What can I do
Right.
to make a
Okay.
difference? What could I do to help you? You know, you tell
Mm,
me, because this is your experience, what can I do? Maybe it's just to sit with you and sit with you in it, and in the, you know, in the uncomfortability of it, and that's fine. And once they tell me, then it's easier for me to show up better for them, rather than just be try and be a mind reader, or just try and making assumptions and try and put in like new policies, like, you know, social work loves to do, and just trying to, oh, this will deal with the problem, that will deal with the problem. No, it's what does the person need and what do they want, and it's different for everyone. So
do you know what? I just did a session which I'm not releasing yet, and because of where you're going with this, I'm going to talk to you afterwards about how we're going to deal with this, because
yeah.
you have. I had a session with Eddie Hippolyte,
Okay.
who I'd love to connect you with. Extremely articulate on the topic of diversity, prejudice, and race, and how we as professionals can deal with it effectively. It's not a complicated thing to do, but what we're looking at here is, and you're offering a similar solution to something that I've been saying for a while. In my, you know, my opinion is, let's have that chat. Let's have that
Mm.
discussion. Let's talk about it. And it's not only about Black people, it's about
No.
also everybody's identity. I think that, and I was, I used to make a joke about it before I was, it was around the time of 9/11, with the whole, the Twin Towers going down.
Mm.
And at that time I was like, boy, it looks like it's the Asians or the Middle Easterns' turn now to experience racism. I said
Mm.
that flippantly, but what it meant was Black people were much less of a threat now. Now we've got a new enemy. And so
Yeah.
everybody's going to have, like, you're going to have Muslims who are going to say, this is how I've been treated as a result of 9/11 and this whole
Mm.
thing around terrorism. And I remember I stood there as a Black person about a year or so later, and I was like, they're not looking at us anymore. They're looking
Mm.
at guys with turbans and beards. And it was a hot time, and probably still is. It depends where you go.
Mm.
For Asians, I don't know if Middle Easterns are Asians, maybe, but North Africans, whatever you looked like,
Yeah.
you were the threat. And so this discussion is about. I mean, the point I'm making is, let's be brave
Yeah.
and get into it.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to your story, your take on it, and it's really opened my eyes even more to. I actually, and I recognize we are both Black. I don't know where you're from, but we're the same color, completely different upbringing,
Yeah.
but we are still not even near the same, because you're a Black woman and I'm a Black man.
Yeah.
And I recognized firsthand that I am treated differently by service users as well as other professionals, because I'm a Black man
Mm.
and not a Black woman. And I have no idea what you're going through.
Mm. Yeah. It's what you're saying is makes sense, and it does. it is something that I don't think, unless you're really aware of it, you've got an awareness of it, and you want to look under the surface, you want to dig deeper, you're not really going to think about, because we're all in our own bubbles, we all think in a certain way. Sometimes we do, by what media tells us, what things are going on in the world. And I think sometimes that can be really dangerous, because who's to say that that's right? Even to say what color we are. I was listening to a motivational speaker. He passed away this year in February. He's called Bob Proctor, and he's been doing a lot of, he's been a motivational speaker for the last, 60 plus years. And he was saying he made a really interesting comment in one of his seminars that I saw recorded live, because it was done in America. And he was saying about color. He was like, you're not, he said to a black man, "You're not black. I'm not white. White is the color of my shirt, but that's not my color." We're just seeing through a filtered lens. We're seeing things, we've been conditioned to see things a certain way, and we're actually not seeing things as they are. And I think sometimes to change the perspective about how we see things is so important. I mean, just going back into colorism, because it's what really interesting what you said about, the different, the colors of your family, different people, how they look, and the shades. And it was really interesting for me. I had all my siblings. I've got 3 siblings, all older than me, and I'm the lightest of my siblings. And they pointed this out to me very, like, when I was quite young, and I still didn't really know what to do with that, because I just never really thought about it. It was never something I thought of. But even when I've gone out I've been around other African people, and what I get is, and this is something that I've spoken to some white people about this, not a lot of them, because it hasn't always come up, and one person was really shocked that this would happen. But I just talked about, like, color. They didn't understand colorism at all, so I was trying to do it in a really basic, simple way. But sometimes when I've gone to African parties and I've been around African people, and I'm not talking about where my parents are from, although they are Nigerian. I was born in London in the UK. When I've been around African people, not Nigerians particularly, but sometimes they can have a real, a real coldness towards me. And I don't usually think about it at all. I don't, I'm someone who wants everyone to be happy when I go out. I want people to have a good time. I want to talk to different people. I'm happy just to chat. But it only occurred to me when I've gone to a few the same parties, and I've talked to different people a bit more, people I didn't know, so who weren't my friends, although some of my friends were there. And I remember telling them that my parents are Nigerian, and as soon as I said that, it's like a 360-degree turn. And they were like, "I didn't know your parents were Nigerian. You look Jamaican to me." And I get that I look Jamaican so many times. I've had it since I was at secondary school. I get it all the time. And it's really interesting when I get it from other African people, because I'm like...
So other Africans don't think you're African, is what you're saying?
Yeah. Don't think I am. And it's not the first time. It's happened over and over and over and over again, to the point where I didn't realize that they would act differently. I just thought maybe they're tired, maybe they just didn't feel like talking. I'd make up things in my mind, like, it's not about me, but actually it was about me and what they perceived as who I was, and also the way I speak. So it has all these other issues within that. So I think when you talk about colorism, when you talk about ingrained colonialism as well, and the way also other Black people treat other Black people, I think this is something that I tried to explain to it. I was working in a council, and I tried to explain to a service manager about... I tried to explain to her a little bit about that. The way she looked at me, it was like it just went over her head. It went over her head. I mean, I had to explain gaslighting to her. She didn't understand that either. But it really went over her head. It just couldn't, I could see that there was no way I couldn't start to explain it, because it just was something that was so removed. It's like, yeah, all black people supposedly look the same, so we should all get on and not have any kind of divides and subcultures within our own, experiences at all. And I think also when if you're talking about, other social workers, could be same level of you get that. I mean, I had a friend who said to me she thought I was Jamaican, so she wasn't sure about me.
Now that's a loaded statement. Say that again.
Sure. So she said that she thought I was Jamaican at first, and she wasn't sure about me. This was another social worker who wasn't white, who was black, by the way. And I'm not sure if social work is ready for those conversations.
I was just going to say, this is heavy.
Yeah.
This is why I say to everybody, there has to be a part 2. Are you coming back?
Yeah, I'll come back. Definitely.
Because this is, look, we have to be honest, because we're human. We don't cure anything unless we're honest about what we have, the problems that we have. Where are we going with this? That is a loaded thing. And so I'm always of the opinion that, this is my opinion. Racism isn't a linear thing. I think it's a broader term of saying black or white. There's different types of blacks in the same way there's different types of racism. Not necessarily against different races, but that's a part of it too. But also the reasons behind the ignorance or the lack of knowledge, or the poor education, the experience. Some people just don't have any experience with people who are other. And that can happen in any community. And I think, interestingly, as social workers, we need to level up. We're in an age where we need to level up, which is why we have people like yourself. And I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
Regarding your heritage, race, whatever you want to call it, how do you identify?
I knew you were going to say that. I thought when you said regarding your heritage, race, how do you identify? And I actually was thinking about this today, because I've had conversations with friends, and they've been like, would you say you're Black British? Would you say you're Black Nigerian? Would you say you're Nigerian British?
Oh, okay. Hold it. Please, with my white and black ears on, because I'm born in this country, but I'm of Jamaican heritage. Don't confuse me. Okay, you can answer the question now.
Well, I'm giving it to you straight. These are the different categories. When you're doing the equality and diversity, and they've got all those tick boxes, drives you a bit crazy sometimes. But I realize why it's needed. It is really needed. But at the same time, you do feel like you're put in a box. In a way, I'm tempted to say, and this might just be today. Might be just how I'm feeling today.
All right.
I actually might not, even though I love my Nigerian culture. I love Nigerian food. I've got some in the fridge at the moment. Not that I cook, but I get it from both places.
How do you identify? You said food.
Yes, and I love it. However, I always struggled with the question, where are you from? And I know you're not asking me that because you're asking me something more specific. But I actually always believe that we're citizens of the world. So in a way, I don't, even though I do identify with Nigerian culture, I wasn't born there. I don't speak any of the languages. My parents' tribe is Yoruba. So there's different tribes in Nigeria. Like a lot of African countries. Yeah. But at the same time, I wrote a poem was a year ago, and I was saying I didn't always feel at home in the UK either. Yeah. So what do I do then?
So say that again, it just cut out.
I said I wrote a poem last year, about not feeling home in the UK. So then I'm like, what do I do now? Okay, if I'm not really, you know, I don't go back to Nigeria. I don't go to Nigeria. I don't speak the language. A lot of people wouldn't recognize that I'm from Nigeria unless you saw my name. Or my parents are from Nigeria, or my heritage is from Nigeria unless you saw my name. But at the same time, there's a lot of things within the Western world and in UK sometimes where I wouldn't fit in either. So it's like, what do I do? Maybe I just say, I say today that I'm a citizen of the world, because I do believe we are. I mean, I don't always agree. I understand why it's helpful when it's so ingrained. Maybe it was the Spanish Inquisition. I have no idea, but we all identify as having a country. But at the same time, it was only luck of the draw where we were born. So we don't really have an ownership to that, but we have an ownership to the world because there's so many humans on the world. I could go into it in a lot more detail, but I would say I was a citizen of the world.
All right, let me ask you again. How do you identify? Do you know what? It's only fair that you answered it the way you do, because your experience, it leaves you there.
Yeah.
Identity-wise, the world hasn't let you settle.
Yeah.
You were born with a very, in a sense, a short stick. There are pros and cons to your experience, and people haven't let you put. You know, when you used to go to school, you used to get a sticker. They haven't let you put a red shirt on or a green shirt. What team are you on? No one's giving you a shirt, and so you have to develop your own. And you're entitled
create my
to
own
do
shirt.
that.
Decorate where I want.
Yeah, and that's it. People haven't let you, and so now you're a professional, and with that operating system in the back of your mind, you have to advocate for others still who are for and against you.
Yeah. And nobody talks about that, right? Nobody really talks about how to advocate for somebody who doesn't like you because the way you look or the color of your skin. No one talks about that. And it's really interesting because I always thought, and I wrote this in the Outlanders, in my piece, my essay in the Outlanders, that we were always taught, when I went to university, I was always taught about anti-oppressive practice. And throughout my placements, it was so anti-oppressive practice. And it was all about empowerment of the service user or client, whatever term is resonates with you. So it's always empowerment for people we're working with. It was never really, and it said that social workers had power, and I did sometimes disagree and challenge my tutors when they said that, because I was like, and this was before I even thought about my own situation of my own race, and I was like, well, there's so much red tape, there's so much bureaucracy. In a way, we don't, although we do. It's like it's a two-way thing. But aside from that, it's more about how you're meant to work with someone who just doesn't like you at all, and there's ways of counteracting that, saying, okay, you can have another worker, or actually allocating a different worker to somebody. But I do think sometimes is that not solving the problem. And I'm not saying people should be put in dangerous situations. I really do. I don't advocate for that at all. I think social workers are put in too many dangerous situations for my liking anyway. But I do think sometimes when we do that to people and we say, okay, well, you don't like this person, so it's all right, we're going to change it. And there are times when that is right and that's necessary for the protection of the worker. But at times I feel like it's kind of buying into that narrative. Okay, just because you don't like this person, you don't like the way they look, you don't like the color of the skin, etc., or they're male or they're female, and you don't like being talked to by females or whatever, or being told certain things by females, then we're going to give you what you want. So we're actually siding with you, we're agreeing with you that this is right.
In action.
And that is sometimes that is my issue with that.
It is a very complex thing. There is no right answer all the time.
No, there isn't. There isn't at
It's case
all.
by
And
case. I know you're saying that it's case by case, but you know, got to get a job done. I mean, it's complex. But the fact that we're talking about that, what does that feel like? Because
and
the
it's happened to
majority.
me. And I don't. It doesn't feel good. It really doesn't feel good, and it feels kind of like. And also, there's little support with that. I don't know that there's the tools, that the profession has the tools to deal with that. And I think at the moment, particularly, it's really challenging because a lot of the time you can hear about all the negativity that's going on with the cuts and the workers and trying to get the workers and agencies taking the workers and all sorts of things like that, and the energy prices and the bills and all of that. So within that, actually taking a step back, like we were able to do, a lot of people were able to do during the COVID time, and the lockdown, it feels really, seems like harder now to do that work than before, because you're so consumed with all this other stuff, and coming up with solutions can sometimes feel very like a pipe dream, even though there is a theory called solution focused theory, which when we were studying, they said to us, this is the theory to use. It's one of my favorite ones, as well as the strengths approach, because I feel like you can always find the strengths if you look hard enough, and you can always find the solutions will come to you. You might not be the one to come up with the solution, the client might do, or someone else might do, or you might get some inspiration. Do you know what I mean? We don't really talk about inspiration that much in social work. And also what you were saying at the beginning about your intuition and your feeling, I don't see that talked about as much. I tried to talk about it when I was newly qualified, and I did the NQSW, and I just got kind of slated for it. I said, you need to rely more on facts rather than intuition or gut instinct. And I was like, okay.
It's funny. I think it might have evolved slightly, because I was taught by my practice educator that both have their place. Intuition and fact have their place. Let's hope. I mean, that was my educator. I don't know if they all have that level of common sense, but I think assessments are open now more to the professional judgments, the breadth of professional judgment from social workers. And that's what I was saying to you earlier on today, that you can sense something with a family or the way that you're being treated, even if it's at work now, right? Let's take it into the professional realm, and you can feel it.
Yeah.
As a minority or as a social worker.
Yeah.
Something's not right. You might not be able to articulate it, but you know it's there.
Yeah.
And then I guess, so go on.
No, I was just going to say, something you can't put your finger on. It might be because you've had that experience too many times before, so you're more attuned to it as well. And
I guess, sorry. I was just gonna. You go ahead. Sorry, I was cutting you.
No, I was just going to say, there is also this thing, a term in psychology called negativity bias, where sometimes we also, because we're so attuned to things going wrong or things happening, sometimes we can even be more alert and be on the alert all the time for it. I mean, you need to look it up. Like,
do you know what?
Because I'm not sure if I've explained it properly, but
no, you've opened something, because I was just about to ask you, because before I asked you this question about having a chip on your shoulder, the topic that we were going to discuss afterwards, we'll leave that for another day. This is too rich. Okay, we don't want to give people more than they can chew on. Do you know what I mean? So we'll come back.
It's a lot to digest.
Yeah, we don't want anyone to choke while listening to this podcast. But that leads into the whole thing of, when anybody, but we're talking about race now, but anybody has a negative experience. I'll give you an example, actually. A particular car brand, an Audi, crashed into me. I now hate Audis. Do you know what I mean? If a woman, say an Asian woman, crashes into me, I don't trust Asian women. So I have a
Mm,
chip on my shoulder. Do you know what I mean? Not
mm,
this is personal, but this is an example of what I've gone through in various things. And so my thing is, you've had your interest in, and you've had experience, and you've had some overt and covert racism throughout
mm.
your life. Do you have a chip on your shoulder?
It would be really easy to, I think. I would say no, although that could be somewhere in my subconscious. So I can't really
Mm,
say completely no. But I think it's more I suppose I'm aware um that people are different, and you do need to look at people's actions and behaviors. That will tell that's the test really for me, the standing test, because somebody can say to me, I really believe everyone should be treated the same, or, I don't believe there's racism, or whatever. They can say anything to me, or, oh, that's horrible what happened to you. But if they're behaving 3 minutes later in a completely way that conflicts what they're saying, I'm going to go with the behaviors from past experience. That's what I do now. They say actions speak louder than words, which is a great saying. And Oprah Winfrey once said that when people show you who they are, believe them.
believe them.
And that's what I
Believe.
do. I'm just like, you can tell me anything, but through the actions, I will see, who you are. They say in the
Mm.
Bible, by their fruits, you shall know them.
100. I just said that yesterday. Come on. These this is key stuff. This is key stuff. You're blowing my mind. We have
Well,
to go
this
by what people.
conversation's so great because I think for so
Mm,
long, just going into more depth about things. So, you've
mm,
got the racism, you've got that, and we can, talk about that until the end of time, really.
mm,
And then you've got things like xenophobia, where's the fear of races and all sorts of things like that. But actually going to more the nitty gritty
mm.
of, the way, I can be actually treated by people who are the same color as me. And people who I would say I would identify more strongly with, Africans, for example, just those things, and even colorism, those kind of conversations is not something you can have every day with everyone. And it
Mm.
can be a lot for someone to take. Like you said, don't want anybody to joke on what we're saying here because it's a lot. But I do feel these conversations need to be had because otherwise they
Hence the book you've just written, or you've been a part of that Hidden Narratives book, because it does that book kind of unpack it in a way that we can process.
yeah, I
Um,
mean, there's
yeah.
different stories in there. And
Mm,
there's quite sad stories in there,
mm.
but everyone has a different like lived experience of racism. Um,
Do you know what? Interestingly, I did a podcast. Let me just go down. I'm just looking at Spotify on my screen. Episode 55. Episode 55, right? I did this podcast, and I'm encouraging everyone to just go and check it out. It's a messy way to address discrimination, because I had experience of how around the George Floyd incident and the Black Lives Matter movement, there was a lot of heat, and everyone was in a rush. I say everyone, all people in responsibility in various institutions and corporations were in a rush to say, hey, let's address this. And I'm sure
yeah.
they addressed it in many, many different ways. And I saw it done really bad,
Yeah.
really, really badly. And so it ended on a cliffhanger saying, that's why we still have code switching.
Mm, yeah.
Um, and I didn't explain what it was in the podcast. I just left it there. Guys, go and check out episode 55. But it is because it addressed the hidden narratives. What do minorities or Black people hear when we hear or see certain things, when we're watching the news? What do you think we hear? Because when I hear that there's going to be another diversity conversation or workshop,
Mm,
what do you think I'm hearing or thinking when I see that title? What do you think I feel when I'm a minority around a table?
Mm,
So yeah, we've been smiling for the last year, but what do you think I
yeah.
see? And what do you think my experiences are? And so your book kind of alludes, for me, alludes to what are minorities thinking and saying,
Mm,
because we don't hear the same thing, or we will hear two narratives at the same time,
mm,
because we have to think professionally and we have to think personally, processing our personal experiences and trying. We've got a pair of glasses. One lens is showing us one thing, and the other lens is showing us the
mm.
other, and that's real. And I would say I'll leave you with a question, which is what we'll end on. The solution, or one solution for addressing the racism stroke discrimination within.
Is that for me?
Yeah.
Okay, one
Oh yeah.
solution. I was just checking. I thought it might be for the
Yeah.
audience.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, one solution. There are so many. I mean, before I would have said educate yourself, which I think is still needed. But I think being asked what I said before, where you asking what people need
Mm,
and what people want as well, what people want and what people need, because they can be
mm,
two different things. Sometimes they're the
mm,
same, but sometimes they're not.
mm,
And listening, really wanting to make a difference. So it's not just hearsay. So you're not going to just
mm,
say, okay, we know what people need. That's great. We've ticked that box. Bye bye. It's actually putting
mm,
it into practice and continuing to do the work over and over and over again. Because we learn
mm,
things through repetition. You see, we learn to, I don't know, people who drive, we learn to drive through repetition, we learn to tie shoes, we learn to dress ourselves, all those things. So if we're learning, it's like learning a new language. We've got to really be dedicated to putting the work, and the work is ongoing. It's not going to be a one tick box exercise. It's going to be
yeah.
ongoing. So I would
Yeah.
say the solution is to continue to ask people what they want and need, and to do the work over and over again. You know, like a practice.
I just want to say, it's always a risk when I invite people on, because I don't know how they're going to be. But I think you have of course, you must know this. You have a particular gift in just being able to articulate difficult things.
Oh,
So I
thank
want to thank you for
you.
bringing that. And I'm not. I'm always mindful. I don't want any. There are no hierarchies. Everyone's contribution to the show is and has been immense. But this is a personal thing. When someone makes me think of something I haven't thought about, which is what you've done today, it's been powerful. So I want to thank you, and I'm going to write a contract and make you sign it to say that there's part 2 and 3 you now owe me. And if you're still on this show, then you have agreed. Okay. Here's the verbal contract. Because it's more education. There's a lot of education here, and on a very, very current affair.
Yeah. And thank you
Uh,
as well, Curtis, because you were asking me questions that made me think, and it just made me pull on other things that I had listened to. I love doing lots of reading as a writer. It's something I need to do all the time, but I love doing as well. And just even thinking about things and actually being open to have these conversations, which
mm,
I think I said that you don't always get the ability and the opportunity to have those conversations with somebody who's willing to sit with you in those
mhm,
difficult conversations where
mhm,
actually it can be quite, it's not easy. I mean, and it's
mhm.
heavy. It's not like rainbows and butterflies, is it? It's not like we're
Wow.
saying, oh, this is, we're talking about sunshine. We're talking about deep and quite heavy stuff, and stuff that people don't really want to always listen to or know and avoid. And we don't always want to confront it. And so I'm grateful to you for inviting me on the show and also be there to have that conversation with.
Yeah, there's more to come. You know, it's funny. You just raised an interesting point. I mean, I've got, how can I put this? Can I say it? I have white colleagues. I will do. I work in a county. Yeah, I work in a county, not necessarily a borough, but I don't want them to treat me in any particular way. I don't mind being misunderstood, and I don't mind being misjudged for the most part. I don't mind, and I don't want the color of my skin to be a reason why you can't ask me.
Yeah.
Just ask,
Yeah.
because I'm going to ask you. You know, and I work with colleagues that are white that actually, in a sense, which is kind of different to what you were saying earlier, but they kind of get it. But I think what they get is that there is an issue, there is a difference, and I don't need any more than that.
Yeah.
But I have a particular colleague, a white female, who just treats me as a brother, and we are worlds apart, culturally, heritage, the look, everything. White female, black male, completely was apart, and we work together so well because we are, and it's similar to something you just said a minute ago. We care about each other.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, are you okay? She's always saying, are you okay? And then I'll say to her, are you all right? Yeah. And that's where it all kind of starts. And then anything else that happens after that, we can do it. So, you know, what you've said is rung a lot of bells for me. And I thought I had to say that because I don't want, there's a lot for white folk to process here.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of, you know, it's more to them. But don't become hypersensitive on the issue, because it gets awkward, you know what I mean?
I think that's the thing. And what you said, you know, rings true for me as well, because I work, and where I work is so welcoming, and I've never experienced that before. I really enjoy my job. I've never said that before. Never. I don't feel like I've ever said that before. If I have said it, I probably said it for the first few days, and it's been all like crazy after that. But people are very welcoming. People are very, I mean, I've got Buddy particularly, who is just so encouraging and really just helpful. And she's a older white female, and older than me, I meant. But she's you know, and she's not the only one. I've got others you know, white people who I'd say we're you know, I'd say more friends now. And to, you know, I know I can have you know, I know if I said something to them, they would get it. Do you know what I mean? It wouldn't be like I have to prove myself, or, you know, or I have to, or did they really mean that? You know, that whole, you know, did they really mean that? Are you sure? You know, you've been too sensitive yourself. Do you know what I mean? All those things that I've had people say to me. And unfortunately, people who are very close to me at times say that to me, which has been really difficult. I know that they're doing the work, and there's stories that have told me that where they've confronted their own biases, their own prejudice, and they actually were like, you know, I was ashamed to admit this, and they've told me certain things, and I've just been like, well, you've done the work though. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
You made the change, because you could have just been like, oh, okay, well, this really doesn't concern me, so I'm just, you know, thanks for telling me, but I'm not going to do anything with it. Do you know what I mean? Like, they've done, you know, people are doing the work already, and it's an encouragement for people who are doing the work, I think, this podcast, but also for those who want to do the work and don't know how. Because it's not easy. It's not easy to be in this world as a human anyway. Like, regardless of, you know, your race, your ethnicity, your
being
gender,
human is work.
everything. Being human it's a daily struggle. struggle. At times it's a daily struggle, and sometimes it's like a minute by minute struggle, an hour by hour. But that's another topic for another day. But I think if you're committed in any way to it, then this is for you, and this is an encouragement. I definitely say this is encouraging. It might not seem like that from everything we said, but it definitely is encouragement. And I know that not all people are the same. So, and for me, it's about your heart, and whether you will, sit alongside or stand alongside me and say, you're welcome. Do you know what I mean? And embrace me. Not everyone has to hug me, that's okay, but just embrace me as who I am as a person, first and foremost.
That's where it starts, isn't it?
Yeah. And we're all learning, we all make mistakes, and we fall, we trip, we get things wrong. That's part of being human. The thing about it is not staying in the wrong. It's like moving forward and moving past that. So acknowledging, okay, I made this mistake, or I've done this, and then moving forward from that. Not staying in it and beating yourself up either, because that's not a good thing to do at all. So please do not beat yourself up, at all. As somebody who's got a recovering inner critic, I say that as a recovering, self-critic, I should say.
Okay, like myself. Do you know what? I tried to end it; it didn't work, but.
We should end it now, actually.
I could do this. This is rich. But again, that's why we have to have another show, and we will talk. We have changed topics slightly, or we've altered the topic slightly. But I mean, it was necessary, and I appreciate the time. It's late. We had to stuff food down our throats just to get here tonight.
Yeah.
And guys, listen. If you're listening, please share. Please learn from this. Please download. Please send it to all your Facebook or LinkedIn groups. This is important. And Rebecca, thank you. And I'm going to say see you later. Thank you for your time. And I think interestingly, whether you say it's God or the universe or just life, your experience has brought you to this show. So it's a privilege. You know what I mean? Yeah. So thank you so much. And guys, we'll see you soon. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. We'll see you soon on the Social Work Race podcast. Take care.
Take care.